My mother had known we would fight. She had not hoped we would. She had not accepted that we would. But she had known, with the particular, precise knowledge of a woman who had raised 3 children and understood each of them more completely than any of us understood ourselves, that when she was gone, the people she loved most would find a way to hurt each other with what she left behind. So she wrote a letter. She sealed it. She gave it to her lawyer with one instruction: open this when the arguing starts. She did not say if the arguing starts. She said when. My name is Anna. I am 44 years old. I have an older brother named Thomas, who is 47, and a younger sister named Becca, who is 41. We grew up in the same house in Richmond, Virginia, raised by the same woman, Dorothy Merritt, who worked as a school librarian for 33 years and who loved her children with the specific, daily, quietly fierce love of a woman who had decided that her family was the most important thing she would ever build. She built it well, and then she died, after a long illness, on a Tuesday morning in April, in the bedroom where she had slept for 38 years. And 3 days later, before the flowers on her grave had time to wilt, her 3 children were sitting in separate rooms of her house, not speaking to each other, because of a disagreement about a dining room table. I am not proud of this. I want to be clear about that from the beginning. I am telling this story not as a witness to my siblings' failures, but as a participant in all of it. I said things. I made claims. I was, in those first terrible weeks, not the person my mother had spent 33 years of librarian work and 38 years of motherhood trying to raise. And then the lawyer called and said the letter was ready to be opened, and everything changed. I need to tell you about Dorothy before I tell you what we did to her memory. She was, and I say this not with the obligatory praise of a grieving child, but with the specific accuracy of someone who knew her for 44 years, an extraordinary woman in the quiet way of people who do not announce themselves. She was a school librarian because she believed, completely and without irony, that books could save children who had no other way out. She had seen it happen, over her 33 years, more times than she could count. She kept a list, not for publication, not for recognition, of the students she believed she had reached. The list was in a notebook she kept in her bedside drawer. It had over 200 names. We found it after she died. 200 names. 33 years of paying attention to children who needed it. She had also raised 3 of her own. Thomas, who became an architect, steady and methodical, and the person in any room most likely to have already identified the structural problem and planned 3 solutions. Me, Anna, the middle child, the one who became a teacher, who has spent 20 years being a version of my mother in classrooms across the city. And Becca, the youngest, who had the most of my mother's specific warmth, and who could make any stranger feel, within 5 minutes of meeting her, that they had found someone who genuinely saw them. We were her children, 3 adults who had, in various measures, her best qualities, who had grown up in a house full of books and warmth and the particular security of being loved by someone who meant it completely, and who, in the weeks after she died, found ways to become strangers to each other over furniture and a savings account and the question of who should have the house. The house. The house where she had slept for 38 years. Where we had grown up, where she had read to each of us and cooked the same meals every week on the same days, and kept her notebook with 200 names in the bedside drawer. We fought over it like it was something other than our mother's life, made physical. As if whoever got the house got the most of her. As if love was something that could be apportioned by a will. It started, as I said, with a dining room table. Thomas wanted it. He said it was the table where we had eaten every family dinner for our entire childhoods. He said it should stay with the person who was maintaining the most connection to what the family had been. Becca wanted it. She said Thomas lived 40 minutes away and rarely visited, and that she was the one who had been closest geographically to Mom in the last years and who had done the most of the practical caregiving work. I wanted it because, and I am going to be honest about this even though the honesty is uncomfortable, because they both wanted it, and I had spent my whole life being the middle child who found a way to get less than the other 2, and I had decided that this time was going to be different. None of those are good reasons. They are the reasons that exist when grief is too large to be held directly, and so it finds the nearest available container, which happened to be a piece of furniture our mother had bought at an estate sale in 1987 for $60. The dining room table became a proxy war for everything we could not say about losing her. And the proxy war expanded. The savings account, modest, the accumulation of a school librarian's careful decades, became a referendum on who had sacrificed more, who had contributed more to her care in the final years, who deserved more of what little remained. The house became a battle over who was the real heir to who she had been, as if inheriting her house meant inheriting her, as if you could own grief by owning a property. Things were said in those weeks that I will not repeat in their specifics, because they belong to the particular shame of a family at its worst, and because some of them cannot be unsaid, and all of us know it. Thomas accused Becca of only showing up when it was convenient. Becca accused Thomas of delegating his responsibilities as a son to his sisters and then showing up for the inheritance. Both of them, at various points, said things about me that were true in the way that weaponized truths are true. Accurate enough to land, frame to wound. I said things back. We were, in those weeks, unrecognizable. Not to each other. We recognized each other perfectly. We knew exactly where to press. Unrecognizable to the woman who had raised us, and she had known this might happen, and she had written the letter. And on the 14th day after her death, the lawyer called all three of us and said, "I think it's time." We sat in the lawyer's office on a Thursday afternoon. 3 chairs arranged in a slight arc facing his desk. Thomas on one end, Becca on the other, me in the middle where I always was, where I would always be. We did not speak to each other in the waiting room. We did not speak in the elevator. We sat in those chairs with the particular rigid silence of people who have said too much to each other recently and are now managing the proximity. The lawyer, a man named Mr. Caldwell, who had known our mother for 20 years and who had, I noticed, the careful expression of someone who has seen this before and is about to do something he believes in, placed an envelope on the desk. Plain white. Our names written on the front in our mother's handwriting. All 3 names, together. Her handwriting, which I had known my entire life. The specific slant of it, the particular way she formed her letters, the handwriting that had written our school permission slips and birthday cards, and the notes she left on the kitchen counter when she went to bed before we came home. Her handwriting, here, now, after she was gone. Mr. Caldwell said, "Your mother was very specific. This letter was to be opened in my presence, together, when the 3 of you were ready. She said you would know when that was." He looked at each of us. "I believe that's now," he said. Becca reached for the envelope first. Her hands were not entirely steady. She opened it carefully, the way you open something from someone you love, who is no longer there to watch you receive it. She unfolded 3 pages, and she began to read aloud, and the room became completely still. I am going to share what the letter said, not word for word. Those words belong to the 3 of us and to our mother, and I will not reduce them to a story detail. But the substance, the truth she had written, alone, knowing she would not be there to say it in person. She began by saying she loved us, not as an opening courtesy, as the first and most important fact, the foundation on which everything else was built. She had loved us our entire lives, and she loved us now, from wherever she was, and that love was not contingent on what came next. Then she said, "I know you are fighting." Not, "I hope you are not." "I know you are." She had written it as a fact, with the same steady certainty she had brought to everything else in her life. She said, "I am not angry. I understand. Grief is large, and people put large things in small containers when they do not know what else to do with them. The dining room table is not really about the dining room table. The house is not really about the house. I know what you are actually fighting about. You are fighting about me, about losing me, about the fact that the thing I cannot give you, more time, more of me, the specific comfort of the person who knew you first and longest, cannot be inherited by anyone." She was right. Becca stopped reading for a moment. None of us said anything. She continued. Dorothy had written about each of us. Not comparisons, she had been careful about that. Had specifically noted that she was not creating a hierarchy, but specific, particular, seen things about each of her children. To Thomas, she had written that she knew he carried more than he showed, that his steadiness had cost him something and that she saw the cost, even when he did not show it. That she was proud of the man he had built himself into, and that she needed him to know she had seen the effort of it. To Becca, she had written that she knew Becca had given more of herself to the caregiving than the others had been able to give. That she had received it, every day of it, with a gratitude she hoped she had expressed, but feared she had not expressed adequately. That Becca's warmth was the most purely herself thing about her, and that the world was better for every person she had ever made feel seen. To me, she had written that she knew I had spent my life being the middle, the bridge, the translator, the one who absorbed the friction between the other two. That she had watched me do it for 40 years and had sometimes failed to say thank you for it because it had seemed so natural, so much a part of who I was, that she had accepted it without fully acknowledging it. She was sorry for that. And she wanted me to know that the people who hold the family together deserve to be acknowledged as much as the ones who are easier to see. Becca's voice broke on that last section. Mine had broken 2 paragraphs earlier. And then came the last part of the letter. Dorothy had written, "The house, the table, the money, these are things. They are mine to give, and I have given them as fairly as I could manage. But there is something else I am leaving you that is worth more than all of it. I am leaving you each other. The only people in the world who share exactly what you share. The only people who know what it was like to grow up in this house, with me, with your father, with all of it. That is not something a will can distribute. It is either kept or lost by the choices you make right now. Please keep it. For me, but more than for me, for yourselves. Because the years are long and the world is hard, and the people who know you from the beginning are the ones you will need most at the end. Please." Becca finished reading. The lawyer sat quietly. He did not say anything. He seemed to understand that nothing he could say would be more useful than the silence. We sat in that office for a long time. I did not know how long exactly. Long enough that the light through the window shifted. Long enough for something to change in the room. Not dramatically, not with the immediate resolution of a scene in a film where the music swells and the embrace is instant and the conflict evaporates in the heat of the revelation. Longer than that. More human than that. Becca set the letter down on her lap, and she looked at Thomas, and she said, "I'm sorry for the things I said." She wouldn't have wanted that. Thomas looked at the floor for a moment, and then he looked at Becca, and he said, "I know. I'm sorry too. I shouldn't have," he stopped. Started again. "I miss her. I didn't know how to just say that." I was crying by this point. Not elegantly. The kind of crying that does not care about elegance, the kind that has been waiting behind the argument and the accusations and the proxy wars for the 2 weeks they had been going on. Becca came and sat on the arm of my chair. Thomas did not move for a moment, and then he got up, and he came to where we were. And the 3 of us, Thomas and Becca and Anna, Dorothy Merritt's children, who had spent 2 weeks becoming strangers over a dining room table, held on to each other in a lawyer's office on a Thursday afternoon. Mr. Caldwell found something to look at on his desk. We stayed like that for a while. And then Becca said, her voice still not entirely steady, she knew. And I said she always knew. And Thomas said nothing, but he held on tighter. We left the office together. We went back to the house, our mother's house. And we made dinner, badly, imperfectly, with the particular comedy of 3 people who are not in the habit of cooking together in the same kitchen, and we sat at the dining room table, the one we had been fighting over. And none of us mentioned the fight. We talked about her. The karma in this story is the letter. Dorothy had known, not hoped known. She had seen her children clearly enough to understand that their love for each other would, in the immediate aftermath of losing her, be temporarily overwhelmed by the grief and the fear and the human tendency to turn large, unmanageable feelings into small, manageable arguments. And rather than simply hoping they would find their way through it, she had made a plan. She had written 3 pages in her careful handwriting and placed them in a white envelope and told her lawyer, when the arguing starts. Not if, when, because she knew them, completely, and she loved them anyway. Completely, and she used the last of her wisdom and her time to give them the thing they needed to find their way back to each other. That is the karma. Not the greedy ones punished, We were all, in those 2 weeks, the greedy ones, not the virtuous one rewarded. None of us were virtuous in those weeks. But the mother who loved her children precisely enough to plan for their worst moment, who knew what they would need and prepared it in advance, who understood that love, to be useful after you are gone, sometimes has to be written down. The house was eventually sold. We split the proceeds 3 ways, evenly, without discussion. The dining room table went to Becca. Thomas and I agreed. Not because Becca deserved it more, but because she had done more of the caregiving, and because the table in her dining room would be used and loved and sat at, which is what our mother would have wanted. The notebook with 200 names on it, we kept that together. All 3 of us. It lives at Becca's house now. We have each read it. 200 names. 33 years of paying attention. That is who she was. And that is what she left us. Not the house. Not the table. Not the savings account, divided carefully 3 ways. The understanding of who she was. And each other. I want to say something to the families who are in the middle of it right now. To the ones sitting in separate rooms of a parent's house, not speaking, because of something that is not really about the thing you are saying it is about. I know what you are actually fighting about. You are fighting about the person who is gone, about the loss that is too large to hold directly, about the terrifying reality that the person who knew you first and longest is no longer here, and that there is nothing, no object, no amount of money, no piece of furniture that can fill that specific absence. I know. We all know on some level, even when we are in the middle of the argument. So I want to ask you to do something. Put down whatever you are holding, the claim, the grievance, and the carefully assembled list of reasons you deserve more than them. And look at the person across from you. This is your brother, your sister, the only other person in the world who grew up in that house, with that parent who carries the specific weight of exactly what you carry. They are not your opponent. They are the only other person who fully understands your loss. Your mother, if she was anything like mine, did not work and love and sacrifice for 30-something years so that the thing she built would fall apart over what she left behind. She built it for you to keep. Keep it. For her. But more than for her, for yourselves. Because the years are long and the world is hard and you will need each other more than you need the table. This has been Veravox. True voices. Real stories. Raw emotion. My name is Anna. Every Sunday, the 3 of us have dinner. We sit at a different table now. But we always talk about her. That was what she left us. That was always what she left us.